But to us, it was just going to be a place to get some sleep in between hours
I
of
have fed
exploring
more
Berlin.
drug fiends than the top 3
We'd hardly be
pharmaceutical.
there, basically, so we figured we'd go for it. When it comes to paying for the rental stuff, there's a problem with my boyfriend's card details, so we decide to use mine. Then there's a problem with my card details too, so we try using PayPal. That doesn't work either. And we can't work out what's going on because we definitely had the money in our accounts. There must have been a problem with Airbnb's payment services or something. But tell that to the owners, who ended up getting really annoyed with us because we'd already basically agreed to rent the place via verbal agreement. By the time we got our bank stuff sorted, it turned out it was fraud on both our accounts. They weren't interested in renting to us anymore, so we missed out. Or so we thought. Ages and ages later, my boyfriend sent me a link to an article from a German newspaper telling me to get it up on my iPad so I could use Chrome to translate it. But before I actually used the translate feature, I scrolled through the whole article like, what did he send this to me for? And lo and behold, there's a picture of the Airbnb we wanted to rent. Only then did I translate the text, so it was only after that that I read that 2 parents and their young baby had died in a carbon monoxide leak that occurred overnight in the bloody Airbnb we were going to stay in. I'm not religious or anything, never have been, but I kind of get what people are talking about now when they mention guardian angels or whatever. If it hadn't have been for that annoying fraud, we'd have rented the flat. And it might have been us that were there when the gas leak happened. I was just absolutely horrified when I read through the story, and I was crying like a baby by the end of it. It said the owner had been arrested over it, that he was going to be charged with some variant of manslaughter or whatever, and rightfully so if you ask me. I still get chills when I think about it though, and obviously we just stick to hotels these days. Not that they're any safer, but it just makes me feel safer, you know? Because when I picture that poor family who went to bed one night and never woke up again, all because some cowboy landlord was too cheap to service the flat, it doesn't bear thinking about. In October of 2017, the 36-year-old Australian Ramesh Janusi was going through a rather rough time in his life. He had been working as a bricklayer in recent years, but a long drawn-out struggle with illegal substances had resulted in Ramesh's lifestyle and health deteriorating rapidly. Drastic measures were needed and fast, but to his credit, Ramesh had the presence of mind to understand that he needed to break from his old life entirely. And so, Ramesh downloaded the Airbnb app and started browsing affordable.
Would you hold out for justice? There was a player in Rise of Kingdoms who was sympathetic to the frailty of new players. He made an alliance called Garden of Eden, which any newbie could join with 0 limitation or requirement. He rushed his own power to 10 million, just so he could protect the alliance and ensure the new players had a space to just enjoy the game and relax. As time went on, he became so popular he was recommended as king. Unfortunately, his popularity and king status made a 33 million power alliance envious, so they attacked him and wiped his power. Thanks to his reputation, after his defeat, he was invited to another server. There, he slowly rebuilt his forces and formed the Avengers Alliance, defeating the tyrant and took control of the entire server, pushing pacifism within the game to new heights. This is just one man's persistence. This is Rise of Kingdoms. This is the justice you fight for.
Come and conquer. Well, it's another rough evening commute, people. Slow and go out there.
Traffic jam? No problem. Our new Thermo-to-Go packaging keeps pollo hotter longer, like the $20 Familia dinner. And to prove it, we're offering free delivery from El Pollo Loco.
Affordable, rentable properties around his home city of Melbourne. Ramesh didn't have a particularly large budget, so he found a room for rent at a very reasonable price. He leapt at the chance to rent it. To Ramesh, it didn't matter that the place had a couple of less than glowing reviews. He didn't care if the atmosphere wasn't friendly. He didn't care if the plumbing looked dodgy. He just needed somewhere that was away from his old haunts, so he wouldn't be tempted to feed his addictions. What exactly happened during Ramis's first 2 weeks in the property isn't exactly clear, but it seemed that Ramis's roommates, he didn't exactly see eye to eye. There was no kind of confrontation or animosity between them, but we know for certain that at some point, Ramis complained to a friend that he didn't like the vibes between himself and his housemate. Yet despite their apparent bad vibes, Ramis chose to extend his stay in the property, which added an extra 210 Australian dollars to his bill. Yet on his final day at the property, Ramis was horrified to find that he had no money in his bank account.
These
It was
supplies
later
will buy us
claimed
a lot
that
of
this
goodwill
was
from the
because
rebels.
his employer had forgotten or neglected to pay him. But regardless of the reason, Ramis had to face the music and tell the landlord that he didn't have the money to pay him. The landlord, a man named Jason Colton, was no fan of Ramis. He was apparently extremely suspicious of his demeanor and had long suspected that he would be unable to pay the extra money to stay in the property to spare the room. Yet there's no way that Ramis could possibly have suspected the extreme nature of Jason's reaction. He figured they'd be able to work something out, delay payment by a couple of days until Ramis could get in touch with his employer. But it seems that Jason was not in the mood to discuss the matter like a gentleman, and what should have been a simple discussion turned into a living nightmare. Ramis just as Ramis was planning on talking to the landlord about his current financial situation, Jordan and the two other young men who lived at the property burst into his room to confront him. They had heard Ramis packing his belongings in the bedroom and assumed he was about to do a runner, as one of them later phrased it, which is why they seemed to be heading him off before he could do so. Ramis apologized profusely before showing Jason a bank account on his phone that was stating that he didn't have the money he owed. He offered to get in touch with his employer and said he could probably get the money over to Jason over the days that followed. As he spoke, Jason's features turned from pale pink to deep red, and as he finished talking, his rage erupted in a fiery display of pure wrath. Jason grabbed hold of Ramis by the throat and pushed him up against the wall, choking the young man violently as he tried in vain to free himself. Jason wasn't exactly a giant, but he still towered over the small stature of Ramis, on top of being considerably stronger than him. It was with Ramis being in this completely helpless position that Jason began to pummel him mercilessly, throwing his fists into his face over and over again until his nose and cheekbones were broken. What became clear much later is that Jason simply did not believe that Ramis didn't have his money. The landlord had gotten it into his head somehow that Ramis was trying to somehow get one over on him by showing him an empty bank account, when really he had the money stashed somewhere else. Jason continued to brutally assault Ramis with the help of the two other men that resided at the property, and at some point, the confrontation spilled out into the front yard. The neighbor that had called the police later said that they saw a man limping from the front door of the property, one who was trying to scream, but was unable to do so thanks to being choked by the enraged Jason Colton. Ramis tried all he could to escape, but Jason continually dragged him back onto the lawn, demanding that he check his bank account again to prove he wasn't lying. But when Ramis once again showed him an account with less than 10 Australian dollars in it, instead of calming down and figuring something out, Jason's rage was renewed. Only this time, he wanted not just to physically hurt Ramis, but to humiliate him too. The landlord then took a plastic pencil case from Ramis's belongings, stripped him half naked, and proceeded to shove the pencil case somewhere it really didn't belong. But Jason wasn't done yet. He began choking Ramis, demanding he pay the rent money that was owed, but Ramis was in no state to form a cohesive sentence. Instead of letting go to give him a chance to speak, Jason continued to keep Ramis in a chokehold. Ramis passed out, never to awaken again. With Ramis in the mortuary, Jason was charged with first-degree murder. A neighbor of his later testified that the disturbance was so loud that she could hear it from a few houses away. The distinct sounds of a man screaming at the top of his lungs. It sounded like aggressive male behavior, she told the prosecutor, and I wasn't going anywhere near them. The prosecution had ample evidence of Jason's guilt, as his police
Mind for our
interviews are a
Sicario
disturbing
friends.
mess of lies and counterclaims until he is confronted with the fact that his victim had actually passed away. At that, Jason stated that Ramis deserved everything he got. But Ramis didn't fight back. He didn't pose a threat to the landlord at any stage. He was mercilessly beaten and choked to death on the front lawn of a small suburban home, all for just a few $100s. The jury saw Jason for what he was, the lowest kind of scum, and convicted him of murder before a judge handed him an 11-year prison sentence. When we use services like Airbnb, we take a great deal of comfort in the flashy website and lose ourselves in the glossy photographs of potential rentals. We're quick to forget how the company is doing, hooking us up with other regular people, and that pretty much anyone can post an advertisement. How many other people like Jason are out there? How many other violent psychopaths are renting rooms to unwary strangers who return from tenants to victims?
Blew myself up.
We should definitely all be careful who we interact with on websites like Airbnb because we might be renting rooms we'll never leave. Okay, so this might sound like a bit of a weird one because not like a spooky story. Our Airbnb wasn't haunted or anything, and I don't believe in stuff like that to begin with. But when me and my girlfriend stayed at Airbnb in Belgium, something happened that freaked us out so much that we had no choice but to leave the apartment and check into a hotel. I've had a mate of mine tell me I overreacted over this, but just put yourself in my shoes. It's not the morning of our little weekend getaway to Bruges. Me and the old ball and chain were getting ready to go out for breakfast, and we realized that neither of us had packed any suitcase. It was one of those I figured you'd do it kind of thing.
Well, that was messy as shit.
When the weather calls for sweaters, then you're living your best life. You know it's about to get better, 'cause here comes pumpkin spice. Pumpkin spice.
Thanks. But it was no big drama since we could just brush our teeth and help ourselves to sketchy mints the owners had left for us. But I do remember my girlfriend looking around in the bathroom just in case the owner had left us any throwaway thing like she left us a suitcase. Boring, I know. You get the point. We go out for breakfast, have our wander around Bruges, grab some toothpaste, and head back to the Airbnb. That night, I go to take a shower before bed and saw that my girlfriend had picked up the weirdest toothpaste that I've ever come across in my entire life. Honest to God, it looked like something you'd get out of a Second World War ration pack with this eye-watering, old-fashioned menthol smell to it. I have my shower, walk back into the bedroom where my girlfriend is half asleep, and I kind of poke fun at her
The
for
trunk's
buying
getting away.
toothpaste.
Escort has been destroyed.
She's after half asleep with one more about telling me to shut up and go to sleep, etc., etc. I had a wee giggle to myself, then got into bed and tried to get some sleep.
Let's call the
It was
rebels.
the weirdest thing because how did she not realize she picked up such
God damn it.
And that's when it hit me. She didn't. She didn't realize because she didn't buy it. Which means someone else bought it and then put it in our room. Which meant that
Oh my God, just blew up. Yay.
in the bathroom. And it's not
Sorry
like
about
the
this,
place
brother.
was small.
I gotta have the
And
car.
the bathroom was near the front door to the apartment or something.
Out.
God forgive anyone who wake up my missus in the middle of the night, but
Hold on, come
I
up on.
decided the circumstances warranted waking her up. She was annoyed at first, telling me to leave her alone, but once I explained the situation, she just sat up rigid in bed, like completely freaked out. We racked our brains as to how someone might have hurt us, but couldn't come up with anything. Like I said, the place wasn't small, and the walls were pretty thick. So how would someone hurt us? The landlord lived miles away, and as far as no one else had keys. It's something that bothers me to this day, to be honest. I can't work out how someone hurt us. And I did ask the landlord about it, who told me no one had been in the apartment. We were convinced it was him, though. Enough to just
Wait,
pack
let me
our
place
stuff
mine.
and leave. I know he hadn't exactly brandished a knife at us or anything. What happened would most likely make for a terrible horror movie, but like I said before, put yourself in my shoes. Someone is listening to you when you go to the toilet, and for all you know,
Placing a mine for
they're
our
watching
Sicario
you too.
friends.
And God knows why they're doing it, but it can't be a good
Wait,
whole
let me place a mine.
Just placing mines and shit.
Just thinking it over had me and my girlfriend getting out of there. It didn't ruin the trip too much. Like we realized early what was going on, so I think we got off quite lightly. The extra hotel money was the real scary part though. Last Christmas was me and my girlfriend's 3-year anniversary. Typically do one.
Helicopter inbound. That was a civilian, dumbass.
By planning over making a getaway.
No, don't come this way.
Rented a cabin in the snowy mountains for the weekend. Found the cabin on Airbnb with a hot
I just gotta withstand 2 fucking minutes of this shit.
The cabin was in the middle of pretty much nowhere. The nearest other house was a half-mile away.
Copy.
Rebels back.
We had to drive down a small, removed, private road. We got to the cabin. We both looked at each other, not thinking it was going to be that desolate. But we quickly brushed it off. The cabin was amazing. We went inside. There was a booklet with all the cabin's info outlined. The book said that during the snow
bitter's
season,
getting
not
hit
be
pretty
surprised
hard,
if their
people.
contracted snowplowers showed up to clear off the driveway. Alright. Well, that was fine.
got a man down.
We thought. We unpacked.
Ooh, shit.
We realized there was no service on either of our phones. So, the booklet in the cabin told us that there was a landline if we needed anything. We spent the first night by the fire, playing board games and drinking wine. It was honestly really nice. I think it was exactly what we needed. Now,
That emitter's taking too much
it was
damage.
only 6 p.m. We planned to spend the next night in town.
Shit, man down.
This night, I booked a reservation for a night dinner. We were
Man
gone
down,
for quite a
Joe.
while.
Man down.
Not returning until about 10. That was great. We were excited to head back to the cabin for some champagne.
Oh, what difficulty am I on, actually? I have no fucking clue.
Something that should be mentioned is it had been snowing all day. As we were driving back, we both took notice to how much more snow had piled up outside. We drove down the private road and got to the driveway. Though, I stopped the car in front of the house with my headlights shining. My girlfriend looked at me confused. There were clearly fresh tire tracks on the driveway, and I asked her if she saw them too. We both knew this couldn't have been us, as we hadn't even driven on the driveway itself, just the nearby street. Immediately, though, we remembered the snowplowers that could have stopped by. But the issue was, we saw the tire tracks because of the snow. And who plows the snow in the pitch black dark? We also knew that once we were at the cabin, we had no cell service on our phones. We both agreed to head back into town and message our Airbnb host, and ask him if one of his friends had stopped by the cabin. We got into town and sent over a text. We proceeded to wait for a reply. But unfortunately, we didn't
Watch
hear
your
back.
civilians. We don't want to kill
We
somebody
got a
by
call,
mistake.
but at that point it was past 10,
Marking
and
the
we didn't want to be
hostile.
disrespectful
Close to some
guests.
locals.
We figured we blew the whole thing out of proportion. Might as well head back to the cabin. Just figured we must have been psyching ourselves out over nothing. We drove back.
Fucker knows somebody's gunning for
We
him
actually
now.
drove up on the driveway. As we got out of the car,
Roger.
something
Target
dropped as I
acquired.
noticed fresh footprints on the
Engaging.
property.
Tango down.
What it looked like, someone had drove up on the driveway, parked, and then got out of the car and walked onto the property. Since we had also now driven on the tracks, we couldn't find where the footprints ended. The property was quite large, with tons of trees and bushes. We knew that the footprints could have gone anywhere. We decided to call the police, as the whole situation was too weird. We figured it was better safe than sorry. We just had the officer go up to the property with us.
I don't know way I can actually do this without fucking dying.
Called the police and waited for their arrival. The policeman showed up. We led him to the footprint. Scanned the property.
Hey, we got an
Even
arc
partly in
with
the
a submachine
surrounding
gun.
woods.
Kill him.
There was no one
You
out
just
there,
tell me.
or anywhere near. Obviously, we were a little shaken up, but thanked the officer as he left.
Placing a mine for our Sicario
To this
friends.
day, neither of us were in the
Oh,
mood to
right.
take a hot tub in the
I
dark.
think I was a little bit too close.
We got a civilian down. What
Locked
the
the
fuck
doors
are you
and
thinking?
watched the movie I had downloaded on my laptop.
Oh, they right over the mine.
Killing a civilian. That ain't the
Both
mission,
tired from the
shithead.
whole day, and I passed out not too far into the booth. Fast forward to 3 a.m., and I woke up. I remember seeing my laptop and finished the movie with my girlfriend fast asleep right next to me. I shut off the laptop, set it on the nightstand. So, I was pretty confused as to what woke me up. I'm a pretty deep sleeper and won't wake up till
Yeah.
morning.
We got the healer.
Then I heard a slight bump on the bedroom window.
attack.
Fall
Our Costa was back up.
Go right back down and fall back asleep.
this way.
Not even 10 seconds later, the sound came again.
Kill nigga, kill.
At that
I'm opening
point,
fire on
I
these
thought I'd have to
shitheads.
get out of bed, pull back the curtains, and see what was making the noise. So I did. I got up and opened the curtains. There was nothing. I turned on my flashlight on my phone to get a better look. And honestly, all I could see was darkness. I had to open the window so the light wouldn't glare.
Drop.
Right as I did, my light revealed fresh footprints in the snow right under the window. I was instantly put on edge. I proceeded to point my flashlight into the darkness. I swear I could see a figure just standing there in the snow maybe 10 yards out. The footprints under the window led exactly to where the figure was standing. My heart dropped, but I stayed calm. I closed the window and woke up my girlfriend telling her we had to go. She asked me why. I didn't tell her, knowing she would freak out. I just said we needed to pack our stuff and leave immediately. Confused, she complied. About 10 minutes after I'd seen the man out the window, we both had all of our stuff at the front door and were ready to make a dash for it to the car. So we did. I opened the door and we dashed outside to the driveway with all of our stuff and got inside. We started the car, starting to reverse out of the driveway when my girlfriend screamed. I looked to where she was looking,
Helicopter
reacting.
incoming.
The figure was. I was inside the house, now just watching us leave. I booked it out of there, not
Chop,
looking
that
back.
invader's taking too many goddamn
Got
hits.
far enough to have cell service. Sent over a text to the Airbnb.
If I can hit that damn helicopter, I can't.
Later that morning, we would get a text back from the guy.
Shit.
He said that he went to the cabin, and there were
Yikes.
all around the building. He said the footprints stopped at every window. This freaked us both out, but realistically, it was out of our hands now. Never heard back from
Every
him.
small ain't nowhere I can go hide at just to get these kills right away.
Just the whole experience in general still terrifies me and my girlfriend to this day. I'm 18.
Oh yeah, that's the hardest one. They get harder every time I
I just
buckle
recently
up,
moved out of
man.
my parents' house to go to an out-of-state college in California. Flight flew in a few days before the school
We gotta
doors
find a
actually
spot
opened.
to sit at.
Me and a few friends thought it would be fun to rent
Even
a
if we do get on the roof, we're getting fucked up.
We bought the cheapest one we could find, as we were just broke college kids.
Mm.
On the first day when we arrived, I couldn't help but notice how sketchy the area was. Easily
Nobody I
tell
can see
where the
down
best
there
place
from
now.
up here, from up there,
So
so
we could provide the cheapest option.
that's out of the question. And the damn civilians like to just ride up in this shit.
So I decided not to go, as I had a pretty bad headache and didn't feel like doing much. So I was left home alone. It was around 9 p.m. and I was just
Getting on this roof is not good.
I saw someone run past the porch window and into the backyard. From what I could see, it looked like a deranged guy hunched over wearing all black. In reaction, I ran to the window facing the backyard. I didn't see anyone. So I never saw the guy return, which meant he must have been somewhere in my backyard. I stood there looking out the backyard window for a good few seconds. I heard a knock on the front door. I jumped in reaction, but walked over to see a pretty normal-looking dude in his 40s. I went right up to the security bars, and the guy proceeded to ask me if I'd seen his son. I replied saying, "Yeah, I think so. I just saw someone go into the backyard." He responded saying his son ran away, and he'd been following him trying to catch up to him. It struck me as
It's
weird,
not
though.
gonna work.
The first guy didn't look much younger than the second. There was no chance he was this guy's son. The guy walked off towards the backyard before I could question it, though. I waited by the front door for a bit, until I saw both of the guys fidgeting with the door in the back. I went up to ask what they were doing. They stopped for a second, and just replied with, "Hey man, my son really has to use the bathroom. You unlocked the door and left it in?" The guy stood there staring at me, dead in the eyes, waiting for my response. I told him no, as these guys really gave me an off vibe. And that's when the second guy threw his whole body at the front door in an attempt to break it down. I jumped back in response, and ran upstairs to grab my phone to call the police. I stayed up there till they arrived. The two men were gone when the police arrived. The two officers proceeded to tell me that 2 other break-ins were reported in that area not even an hour ago. I never knew if they ended up catching the 2 guys. It's likely that the first guy ran into the backyard to try to find a way in the house.
Good to go.
The second guy went to
Chopper
help him.
inbound.
What disturbs me most is the fact that they didn't want to break in just to rob the place. They weren't even scared off by the fact that someone was home. They wanted to open the door so that they could get inside and who knows what.
Frag out. Get some.
Ay, ay, ay.
I'm a male living in South Korea. My cousin, Nari, used to be an Airbnb hostess here in Seoul. The site's become massive. There's something like 2 million properties listed on it.
Letting them damage the emitter
No
too
matter
much.
where you're traveling to in the world, chances are that there's somebody with a room or a condo
That emitter's
or
taking
even
too
an
many-
entire house to rent. During her time hosting, Nari met a whole bunch of colorful characters. There was a sweet older couple
Oh,
who
fuck this
visited her
mission.
8 times while visiting friends in the city. There was the guy who insisted on bringing his dog with
No
him.
matter where it
This
goes,
little
I'm not gonna
rat-sized
actually
chihuahua that
handle
was
this
about
shit.
half the size of my cats. There were a few people who were high maintenance, and there were a few who were really chill, and ended up joining us for drinks at the bar down the street. I never hosted personally, but I'd help Mary out with her bookings if she had to work late and needed someone to meet her guests. Well, for all the good people, there was Mr. Paul. He was this creepy, balding guy that stayed with Nari for a week while he was in town on business. At least he said that was his reason.
I'm just gonna get right back down because I'm.
I think we were both
You're gonna
relieved
be
when he
alright, you
left.
hear me? I'm on the way.
I'd met him
Hey, get
once
to cover.
and didn't like the vibe I got off the guy, and there wasn't much he could do to kick him out early or anything, lest he gave her a bad review and dropped her score on the site. After he left, Nari discovered a weird plastic thing he left in the shower. Turns out he had left his slimy, fake vagina masturbation aid sitting next to her soap. I took one look and had to explain to her what it was. I remember her picking it up in a plastic bag, like the way people scoop up dog shit on the street. From then on, Nari was pretty picky when it came to who she let stay. One weekend, Nari had to leave for a business trip, so she left me the spare key. She had a booking coming up, a young woman named Sumi, and I was to play host. We'll just call her Sue from here. Sue checked in, got the key from me, and put her suitcase in the spare room. I didn't see any more of her that Friday, or the rest of the weekend, and I figured she was out enjoying herself. Not too long after that, I could have sworn I saw Mr. Park in our local grocery store. Same folding head, same vibe, but he was at one end of the aisle and I the other. I got that feeling like I was being watched, but when I looked directly, he was gone. At the time, I shrugged it off, figured it had to be some other bullshit guy, and I was just projecting my style.
Got the helo.
The building I live in is fairly
I'm
old,
shooting these fuckers.
which means that the walls are pretty thick,
Shit.
and
Dead
noise
troops are
tends to only
reinforcing.
travel
Shots
in the
fired.
hallway.
Dad's engaging the cartel.
If I'm waiting for the elevator, I can occasionally hear someone's TV if it's really loud, but that's about it.
Mind. Give me a sec.
That Monday morning, I was woken up far too early by a pounding sound. It was maybe 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and the sun
Emitter's
was
getting
barely
hit
out.
pretty hard, people.
At that point, I was pissed. I threw on a housecoat and yanked open the front door without bothering to look in the peephole.
They're wrecking the damn emitter.
I was greeted by 2 very tense police.
I got a
They asked for my name,
Shit,
and
the
if I
emitter's
took a
been
young
blown
woman who
damage.
lived across the hall from
We
me,
got a chopper.
pointing at
Kill
Nari's
control.
apartment. Without thinking, I ran across the hall and through the open door, just knowing in my gut that Nari was supposed to be returning that morning, and that something must be wrong if there were police at my door. The cop yelled for me to wait, but I was on autopilot. At first, I thought someone had robbed the place. Her
Goddamn
TV was
emitter's
smashed.
taking a lot of
The
damage.
couch was ripped apart,
Down,
like it had
he's
been
down,
mauled
chop.
by a bear. Those were buried under
He's
broken
down.
glass. A laptop had practically
We got
melted
man down.
into the floor. And then I realized, in some part of my brain, that her TV and laptop wouldn't be here if it was a simple robbery. And that's when I
Oh my god, dude.
Death has a certain stench to it. Sometimes, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, like a hospital corridor, you'll get a whiff of it. What I smelled was a full-on, closed-handed fist slug into the face. In a panic, I couldn't stop myself. I flung open the first bedroom door. Nari's room looked just like the living room, but she wasn't in it. By this time, the
the officers had caught up with me and were trying to steer me back out of the unit, but I broke free of their grasp and flung open the spare bedroom door. Inside was what was left of Sue. We get so desensitized to violence on TV that when we're actually confronted with it in real life, it seems almost absurd, like it's totally unreal. She had literally been torn to shreds with a knife.
We searching this location for intel.
Just from smelling the air alone, I could taste that metallic flavor of blood
We got some
in the
wounded
back
men
of my
coming in.
mouth.
Got a
I
tank.
showered several times a day for the next week and could not get that taste,
Moving to position.
that smell out of my hair or skin.
Oh, sure. Jesus Christ. It's starting to piss me off now.
Friday night. Nari got home a few hours later. By that time, the forensics team had already been in and out and was starting to clean up the scene. I couldn't tell her about what I'd seen. I just remember hugging her.
Oh, get away from there!
While investigating,
Oh,
the police
sure.
had found a second set of keys. This meant there was actually a third set of keys to
Out of
Nari's
the car, now. Don't make this harder than it has to
had
be.
Chris.
I'll drive.
3 guesses as to who they traced back to. Mr. Palm. Palm
Better not
had
roll
a
this
set of
thing.
keys while staying at Nari, and he wasn't here on business as he had claimed. It turns out he lived about 15 minutes outside of the city. Security
Shitballs.
camera footage showed him coming into the building that Friday night, and him lurking around outside for the past month prior to that, just after his stay. Surprisingly, Park confessed to the murder, said he didn't know that Nari would be out of town, that he hadn't known she had had a guest that weekend. His wife had recently left him and taken the kids with her, and Nari reminded him
Fucking
of a
hell.
younger version of his wife. Nari and I have both moved buildings since then. I still can't believe that all of this came because of broken trust. By giving a stranger a safe place to stay, by letting him into her home, this person was so twisted that he thought to make a copy of her key. If it had been any other weekend, Nari would have been at home, and what happened to Sue would have happened to her.
Group, you guys playing that game called Warpath? Yeah. What's your best unit? I have a 3-star classic howitzer.
I have a 4-star Charlie 1.
MQ-76I Magnum. I got a 5-star Tiger Sea Commander, 5-star 7.5 CM Cat 40 anti-tank gun, and a heavy star 5-7 NA, and a 5-star anti-35 tank gun. How do you get so many 5-stars? From 33 draws, of course. You need 5-star Gigi. Then I'll get all my resources from farming Raven. Get ready to see the 6 round run. Battle of Moscow is yours. Download now for free. Enjoy the best.
Oh, come on.
It's time to spread your wings and your flippers. Breathe the air. Excite your senses from day to night. It's time to see the world again. SeaWorld.
Hey,
For the
found a
best deals and
Sonic
offers,
metal.
visit
It's a really nice
SeaWorld.com.
souvenir. We'll let the rebels know where to find these supplies. They can pay us back later.
Picture this. You're on a school bus going to school in the early morning. You're suddenly stopped by a red light. The railroad crossing suddenly activates.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
What you don't realize, though, is part of your bus is hanging over part of the tracks. You then hear the gate arm slap the rear end of your bus as it comes down. Then you look toward the track and see a 70-mile-per-hour commuter train with no way to stop as it heads toward you. Sounds like quite the nightmare, huh? Well, that nightmare was reality for a bunch of high school students in Fox River Grove, Illinois.
On October 25th, 1995, Metra Express 624 is departing Crystal Lake Station bound for Chicago. It departs at 7 a.m. right on time. 624 is often known as the Flyer since it skips most stations at over 90 miles an hour as it heads down the Windy City.
Don't know where to go to get
However,
up
the
there.
buses at Crystal Lake School District were not having
I'm gonna get a plane.
Most of the buses were departing on time at around 6:15 a.m., but the driver for school bus 103 that was supposed to run Route 47/155 to Cary Grove High School didn't show up for work. So 54-year-old Patricia Katzenkamp, a safety supervisor, would have to substitute that day. She had prior experience with bus driving, but she was still rather new to this route. By the time she was ready to leave, the bus was already 20 minutes late. It was a rather cold fall morning, so some of the students still waiting outside had to quote-unquote huddle together to keep warm. The first two kids were picked up at the first stop at 6:55 a.m. The two helped to guide her through the route so she knew exactly where to go. By 7:05, the roads were backing up with the typical rush hour traffic. But as for 6:24,
No plane.
it was flying down the tracks
Okay, look, I stole a
60
plane.
miles an hour with no traffic stopping it. At 7:10, the last of 39 kids finally
steal
got on
this
the
one.
bus. So now it was time to get to school.
Buckle up, people.
Freshman John Atson sat in the third row after sophomore Joe Calton, who stated that the back was for upperclassmen like himself, and the front was for freshies like John. That little move would prove critical later. Seconds later, the train and bus's paths had to intersect at the Algonquin Road Railroad crossing. They were approaching it around the same time, but the bus got there first. Katzenkamp stopped, looked, listened,
Eyes
but
on
she
two
said she
Sicaris.
saw no train
Near
coming.
that stack of tires.
Proceeded across. But immediately after
I got
she
it.
started
I'll fly.
moving,
Head back
a
over the
red
side.
traffic light stopped her at the other side of the crossing at an intersection. Behind the bus was Jim Hummela. He was stopped behind the bus and noticed a headlight was approaching Metro. Suddenly, the crossing activated warning of the oncoming Metro. Jim was rather concerned about where the bus was stopped, and he noticed the gate snapped the bus from behind. Then Jim knew something was wrong. 3 inches of the bus's back hung over the tracks, and the Flyer is going full speed towards it. The engineer and the students were now facing one of
Good work.
the worst
I'll let the
nightmares
rebels know where it is so
possible.
they can pick it up.
The engineer could only
Here, I thought you might want us to carry the damn thing out of here ourselves.
Pray the bus got out of the way. The kids at first joked about the situation, but when they saw how fast the train was approaching them, they began to panic and scream at the back of the bus. Then Jim
All right, good to
realized
go.
that the Flyer was coming through. The kids were freaking out. They were screaming, "There's a train coming! There's a train coming! Move! Move!" Some of them even tried to make efforts to get out of the bus on their own. Jim Hummela behind the bus was yelling, "Go! Go! Go!" Patricia Katzenkamp, however, was confused from the screaming and didn't understand. Sadly, no one's prayers were answered. Metro 624 T-bones the bus at over 40 miles an hour. The force of the impact shears the whole passenger compartment off the chassis of the bus, sending it 180 degrees onto the side of the track. The police chief, who witnessed the whole scene from the police station down the street, immediately called in as many officers as he could and requested EMTs be dispatched to the scene. Helen Gretschel, a nurse for the dying,
Hold on,
ran
there's
out
a
of the
weapons
nearby
case here.
coffee shop to help save some of the badly injured past the street. Rescuers worked frantically to free the students from the mangled wreck of what was once their bus, while anxious parents awaited the news of their kids' condition. 5 kids died on impact, and 2 others died not long after the impact. One of them, Jeff Clark, was even treated hit by Helen with a security station. He was trying to help him breathe by getting the blood out of his lungs, but he died in run.
Nice. I got a sniper rifle over here.
Schneider, who was Jeff's friend, also died. She had just gotten her first
Deploying drone.
paycheck at her first job that would sadly never be checked in.
I've got eyes on the captain.
The sophomore, Joe Colby, who told freshman John to sit in the front,
Another tango.
also
Just spotted one with
he
some
had
machine
car
guns.
trouble that morning, and his decision to tell John to move up practically saved the freshman's life.
Marking a captain. Got a target
Anyone
carrying some
who
machine guns.
suffered minor injuries has been Pacific Captain Camp, the driver.
Enemy spotted.
You gotta wonder, how could such a nightmare unfold on an average October morning? And why? Was it solely the driver's fault?
Marking an enemy.
The NTSC investigation.
I'm getting a position. Need to get to a better position.
That's 10.
First off, the crossing was badly designed. These kind of intersections are known as interconnected crossings because of the need to link the railroad signals to the road signals.
Just spotted one with some machine guns.
The crossing was one of
Target
the
acquired.
most dangerous designs.
Target lost my
A
target.
long vehicle could be trapped
Target lost.
partially on the crossing as being held by a red light at the intersection. At the crossing itself, the distance between the crossing and the stop line was 30.
Target spotted.
The bus, 38 long. If the driver realized this danger, he would have been forced to pull through the red light to clear the track and cross the accident. Some witnesses said there was a car preventing the bus from moving forward.
Got it. Moving.
But investigators dismissed this theory as it was proven false.
Copy.
He could have
Target
pulled
marked.
forward. Also,
Y'all ain't got these two yet.
I'm moving to position. Let me find a good position.
20 seconds before the arrival of the metro. However, the traffic lights clearing the rail intersection
Target, say the
only
word
allowed
lost.
cars
I don't have a no target. Repeat, got one. No target.
giving cars
Get back
only
before they make you.
6 seconds to clear the track. Roadway signal timing is under the jurisdiction of the Illinois Department of Transportation, while railway timing was under the jurisdiction of the Pacific. No communication took place between both parties regarding interconnected signal timing. It was reported that the crossing had originally given a safe quantity path that had been modified some months previously to allow a pedestrian crossing overlooking the possible consequences of the railroad crossing. The signal would rest in the walk indication for pedestrians during the morning usage. But when a train is detected, this interval must be ended.
Roger that. Moving. Roger. Target acquired. Watch it. Full bearings. Moving to position. Let me get a good sight line. Target marked.
Crosswalk where light.
Hold up. Let me get a good sight line. Ready to engage. Target lost.
Road IDOT traffic engineer is responsible for establishing signal timing. Should have
Looks like we've riled
recognized
them up.
that this particular case, resting in the walk carries substantial risk and virtually no benefit. It is not allowed to pass rest walking.
They know we're here.
Traffic signal has not been cleared.
Fire.
Copy. Their LT's
Call
escaping.
Pacatory for some reinforcements.
No damn way.
The thumb wheel setting on the crossing processor that determines how long it
Yeah, I got ran over too.
activate was reduced from 30 seconds to 25 seconds, 2 weeks before it crashed.
He ain't getting away.
Specific official, however, stated that the new value was still above the FRA limit of 1 second. However, that doesn't excuse the driver from anything. This patent count failed to properly set the distance between the railroad track and the stop line of the traffic signal.
This nigga again with the ultimate
Meant that around
amen.
the back of the bus hung over the nearest rail, while the body of the metro train extended 3 feet past the rail. All the injuries were sustained during the initial impact. Then, an interesting fact, the NTSC concluded that the traffic signal did turn green 6 seconds before the initial impact, but because Kattenkamp was so distracted by what she presumed was some crisis within the bus, he didn't see the light turn green. It was a final warning. It never came through.
Golly, y'all couldn't kill the person that was shooting at me?
Were held at the McHenry County
It's starting to get annoying. I'm starting not to like this damn game right now.
Sleep was all the way for school, and new route designs brought the number of routes crossing railroad tracks in the District 47 and District 155 school systems down from 70% in 1996 to 10% in 1997. However, ever since the accident, Patricia Kattenkamp, the driver, would never drive a school bus again. But she still worked for the School District Transportation Division for another 5 years before retiring in 1999, then moving out of state. She never spoke publicly. Her friends, interviewed after the accident, said she was devastated. So was the train's engineer, Ford Dotson Jr., who wept during the 1996 NTSB hearing while recalling his inability to stop the train in time. A large granite memorial and 2 plaques were placed in memory of the 7 students killed in the crash near the site. The Fox River Grove Public Library was renamed the Fox River Grove Memorial Library, which includes an outdoor memorial stand with the names of the 7 students. A memorial outside the high school the bus was headed to was also added. 23 years have passed since the accident. Bus routes now don't go over train tracks as often across the United States, so hopefully an accident like this never happens again.
I got a 30.
Shit, we got company.
We done? Shit, kinda got all excited there.
Going on, baby. Next to the deal.
We'll leave a marker so the rebels can pick up the supplies later.
Move to that bird, on patrol. Watch out.
I need a better position. Target acquired. I've got the target.
Enemy spotted.
Fuck, engage. Hold up, they're gonna see you. Looks like they're feeling froggy. The lieutenant's on the run.
Got enemy activity nearby. I'll catch up with you.
Oh, yeah, sure.
We're good, we're good.
Shooting these guys.
Body.
Shit balls.
All ass before that thing blows.
I'm hauling ass before I fucking die.
Get ready.
Put him in a body.
Call the rebels for reinforcements.
Get that quieto.
Grenade, move. Just hold on to your shit. Man down.
Oh, hell. We're supposed to scare him and set him loose. I'll blast him to pieces.
Usually y'all let me just shoot their ass down.
Man down over here.
I'll drive.
I'm done. Fuck this shit.